They humiliated her in front of hundreds of people. His mother poured champagne on her shoes. His sister recorded it for the world to see. Security dragged her out like garbage, while his mistress wore her dead mother's jewelry. His entire family laughed and called her nobody. But in the parking lot, 5 black SUVs surrounded her. A billionaire stepped out and bowed at her feet. "Ma'am," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Your real family is here." That billionaire was her father, and she had just inherited $5 billion. Now let me tell you how we got here, because this story is going to break your heart before it puts it back together. This is about a woman who discovered she was royalty walking among people who treated her like trash. And when the truth came out, oh, the people who destroyed her were about to lose everything. Stay with me. You won't believe what happens next. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about the worst night of Isabella Rodriguez's life. The night she thought would break her forever. But listen closely, because this story isn't about breaking. It's about discovering you were never broken to begin with. It happened at the Grand Hotel in Miami, at the Spring Charity Ball. You know the kind of event I'm talking about. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. People dressed in clothes that cost more than most folks make in a month. Everyone's smiling, laughing, making connections. This was where the successful people came to celebrate their success. Isabella walked into that ballroom wearing a simple black dress she'd bought 3 years ago from a department store sale rack. She'd ironed it carefully that morning, hoping the wrinkles wouldn't show under the lights. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. No fancy jewelry. No designer shoes. Just a woman trying her best to look like she belonged. She was there because her husband, David, told her to come. David worked as a director at a big advertising firm, always climbing the ladder, always chasing the next promotion. And Isabella? She loved him. She'd worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to help pay for his graduate degree. She'd believed in him when nobody else did. She'd been his biggest supporter for 7 years. But lately something had changed. David came home late. He smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. He barely looked at her anymore. And when she tried to talk to him about it, he'd say she was being paranoid, dramatic, insecure. So there she was, searching the crowded ballroom for her husband, her heart already heavy because deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. Then she saw him. David stood on the other side of the room in an expensive suit, laughing with a woman Isabella had never seen before. The woman was beautiful, confident, wearing a red dress that screamed money. But that's not what made Isabella's blood run cold. It was the bracelet. The gold bracelet on that woman's wrist belonged to Isabella's mother. It was the only thing of value Isabella owned. The only piece of her family she had left. Her mother had given it to her before she died, telling Isabella it had been in their family for generations. And now this stranger was wearing it. Isabella's hands started shaking. She walked toward them, her cheap shoes clicking on the marble floor. And with every step, the truth became clearer. The way David's hand rested on this woman's waist. The way she leaned into him. The way they looked at each other. This wasn't just a colleague. This was something else entirely. The woman's name was Natasha. She worked in David's office, always dressed like money, always acting like she owned every room she walked into. And when she saw Isabella approaching, she smiled. Not a friendly smile. A winner's smile. "David," Isabella whispered when she reached them. Her husband turned slowly. And the look on his face wasn't surprise or guilt. It was annoyance. Like Isabella was an interruption he'd been expecting and dreading. "Isabella, what are you doing here? You told me to come. You said this was important." Natasha laughed. A light, tinkling sound that cut through the air like glass. "Oh, honey, he meant it was important for us. Not you." Before Isabella could process what was happening, David's family appeared. His mother, Patricia, dripping in diamonds. His brother, James, tall and smug. His sister, Amanda, already holding up her phone to record. David cleared his throat. The conversations around them started dying down. People were watching now. Isabella felt hundreds of eyes turning toward them. "Everyone," David announced, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "I want you to meet someone very special. This is Natasha Cole, my partner and the woman I'm going to marry." The room went silent. Isabella felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. She looked at her husband, the man she'd sacrificed everything for, the man she'd loved with her whole heart. And she saw a stranger. "David, we're married," Isabella whispered, but her voice came out broken. Patricia stepped forward, her voice loud and sharp. "Isabella, sweetheart, let's be real. You were just temporary. We've been looking for someone worthy of our family name. Look at Natasha. This is what a proper wife should look like." James laughed. "Come on, Isabella. You had to know this was coming. You came from nothing. You have nothing. Did you really think you belonged in our world?" Amanda moved closer with her phone. "This is going viral. The nobody who thought she was somebody." Isabella looked at David, waiting for him to say something, waiting for him to defend her. They'd been together for 7 years. She'd loved this man with everything she had. But David just looked at her with cold, empty eyes. "Security," he called out. "Please escort this woman out. She doesn't belong here." 2 security guards appeared at Isabella's sides. She didn't fight, didn't scream. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't make a sound. The small-town girl from rural Texas, raised to keep her dignity even when the world was cruel, stood there while everyone she thought was family destroyed her in public. Natasha stepped closer and poured her champagne onto the floor at Isabella's feet. "That's where trash belongs," she said sweetly. "On the floor." The guards took Isabella by her arms and walked her toward the exit. Her last image of that ballroom was David pulling Natasha close and kissing her. Right there. In front of everyone. In front of his wife. They pushed her through the doors into the cool Miami night. The parking lot was mostly empty, just rows of expensive cars gleaming under the lights. Isabella stood there alone, her whole body shaking, mascara running down her face. She'd lost everything. Her husband, her dignity, her place in the world. But what she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that everything was about to change. Standing in that parking lot, Isabella reached into her small purse with trembling hands. She pulled out the only thing that had ever truly belonged to her. A worn envelope, yellowed with age. Her mother, Rosa, had given it to her on her deathbed 6 years ago. "When you're ready, Mija," her mother had whispered, her voice weak but urgent. "Read this. Your father loved you. He just couldn't stay. But he never forgot you." Isabella had never opened it. She'd been too afraid. Too afraid of being disappointed again. She'd spent her whole life being nobody's priority, and she'd rather live with the mystery than face another painful truth. But standing there, humiliated and broken, with nowhere to go and no one to call, Isabella finally understood. Sometimes you have to lose everything before you're ready to face the truth. Her hand shaking, she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written in strong, elegant handwriting. "My dearest daughter, I held you for exactly 5 minutes before I had to let you go. Your mother was the love of my life. Losing her when you were born broke me in ways I'll never recover from. But you, my precious girl, you were perfect. I wanted to keep you, raise you, claim you as mine. But dangerous people wanted me dead. Business rivals who would stop at nothing. If they knew about you, they would have used you to destroy me. They would have hurt you to hurt me. So I let your grandmother take you somewhere safe, far from my world. I've watched over you from a distance your whole life. Every birthday, every achievement, every heartbreak. I couldn't be there, but I was always there. When you read this, know that you are loved. You are not alone. You are my daughter, and that makes you extraordinary. Your father, Richard Montgomery." Isabella's heart stopped. Richard Montgomery. The Richard Montgomery, owner of Montgomery Global Properties, one of the largest real estate empires in the world. The man owned hotels, resorts, and commercial buildings in 40 countries. He was worth billions. And he was her father. She kept reading. There were more letters, one for every year of her life. Her father had been watching her entire life, waiting for the right moment, waiting until his enemies were gone, and it was safe to reveal himself. The final letter was dated just 2 months ago. Isabella, you're 30 years old now, old enough to handle the truth. My enemies are gone. The threats are over. I've built an empire, and it's yours if you want it. But I won't force myself into your life. If you want to meet me, I'll be waiting. If not, I'll continue watching over you from afar. But know this, my daughter. You are worth more than how anyone has ever treated you. You are a Montgomery. And when you're ready to step into that truth, I'll be there. All my love, Dad. P.S. There's a phone number at the bottom. Call me anytime, day or night. Isabella stared at the phone number. Her whole body was shaking, but now it wasn't from sadness. It was from something else. Something like hope. She'd grown up in a tiny apartment in rural Texas with her grandmother. They'd been so poor that some nights they ate rice and beans for dinner 3 days in a row. Her grandmother worked as a cleaner, her hands raw and red from years of scrubbing other people's floors. But her grandmother had taught her something important. We might not have money, Mija, she'd say, but we have dignity. We have grace. And we have love. That's more than most people ever find. Isabella had carried that lesson with her. Even when David's family made fun of her simple clothes. Even when they introduced her last at every family gathering. Even when they made it clear she wasn't good enough. She'd stayed kind. She'd stayed humble. She'd made herself smaller and quieter, hoping that if she just loved David enough, he would finally see her value. But you can't make someone value you by devaluing yourself. Standing in that parking lot, Isabella pulled out her phone. Her hands were still shaking, but she dialed the number. It rang once before a man answered. His voice was deep and warm and somehow familiar, even though she'd never heard it before. Isabella? She couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, she whispered, "Is this real?" "Every word, baby girl. Every single word. I've been waiting for this call for 30 years. They talked for 3 hours that night. Richard told her everything. About her mother, the teacher he'd met during a business trip to Texas. About their love story. About the men who'd tried to kill him and how he'd spent decades carefully, methodically protecting himself and his daughter. About the empire he'd built, partly as a way to cope with losing the 2 people he loved most. "I own Montgomery Global Properties," he explained. "We're in real estate, hospitality, and commercial development worldwide. The company is worth about $12 billion. And 40% of it is yours. I set up a trust the day you were born. It's been waiting for you." Isabella couldn't process it. "I'm a billionaire? You're my daughter. The money is secondary. What matters is that you know you're loved. You're valued. And everyone who treated you like nothing is about to learn exactly who you are." Then Richard said something that changed everything. "In 2 weeks, David and Natasha are throwing an engagement party. Same hotel, same ballroom. I can get you an invitation. We'll make an entrance. They'll never forget. But only if you're ready. I won't push you." Isabella thought about running away with her inheritance, starting over somewhere far away. But then she thought about her grandmother. About all those years of being small and quiet. About making herself less so other people could feel like more. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's show them the truth." The next 2 weeks felt like a dream. Or maybe like waking up from a nightmare into real life for the first time. Richard sent a car for Isabella the morning after their phone call. Not just any car. A black Mercedes with a driver in a crisp suit who called her Miss Montgomery and treated her like she mattered. They drove to an estate in Coral Gables that looked like something out of a movie. Palm trees lined the driveway. The house was white and elegant, with tall windows that caught the morning light. When the car stopped and the door opened, Isabella saw him. Her father stood on the front steps. He was in his 70s, but carried himself with quiet power. Silver hair, kind eyes, expensive suit. And when he saw her, his face transformed. Pure joy mixed with years of pain and longing. Isabella got out of the car slowly. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Richard opened his arms. "Come here, baby girl." Isabella ran to him. She ran like a child who'd been lost and finally found her way home. And when he wrapped his arms around her, she broke down completely. All the years of loneliness, all the pain of that terrible night, all the fear and confusion poured out of her. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there," Richard whispered, holding her tight. "I'm sorry you had to go through everything alone. But you survived it. You stayed kind through all of it. That's not weakness, Isabella. That's the strongest thing a person can do." They spent hours in his study, looking through photo albums. Richard had pictures of Isabella from every stage of her life. First day of school, high school graduation, even her wedding day. "You were there?" Isabella asked, staring at a photo of herself in her simple wedding dress, David beside her looking happy. "Back when she believed in forever." "In the back row," Richard said softly. "You didn't see me, but I was there. And I saw how he looked at you then versus how he looks at you now. I wanted to intervene so many times. But you had to walk your own path. You had to learn your own strength." Over the next 2 weeks, Richard introduced Isabella to her new reality. Lawyers explained her trust fund. She was worth nearly $5 billion. She owned property in 6 countries. She had investments in companies she'd never heard of. But more than the money, she had something else. Power. Real power. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Stylists came to the house. They brought dresses and shoes and jewelry. Isabella tried on outfit after outfit, each one more beautiful than the last. She'd never worn anything like this before. Never felt silk against her skin or diamonds at her throat. One stylist, an older woman named Grace, noticed Isabella's discomfort. "You look like you don't think you deserve this," Grace said gently. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I do." Grace took Isabella's hands in hers. "Honey, let me tell you something. Deserve has nothing to do with it. You were born deserving. You deserved love and kindness and respect every single day of your life. The fact that people didn't give it to you doesn't mean you didn't deserve it. It means they were blind." Those words sank into Isabella's heart like rain on dry ground. The night before the engagement party, Isabella stood in front of a mirror in her father's home. She wore an emerald green gown that fit her perfectly. Her hair was styled in soft waves. Her makeup was subtle but flawless. And around her neck was a diamond necklace with the initials RM, her father's gift to her. "You don't have to do this," Richard said gently, standing behind her. "We can just live our lives. Let them fade into irrelevance." But Isabella shook her head. "They need to know. Not for revenge. For truth. Every woman who saw them humiliate me and thought that's just how life is needs to see that it's not. That you can walk through fire and come out gold." Richard smiled with pride. "Your mother would have said the exact same thing. She had fire in her, just like you." That night, Isabella barely slept. She kept thinking about her grandmother, Rose's mother, who'd raised her with so much love despite having so little money. The woman who'd worked her fingers to the bone to make sure Isabella had food and clothes and books for school. "Mija," her grandmother used to say, "we might be poor, but we're rich in the things that matter. We have each other. We have our dignity. And we have God watching over us. Never forget that." Isabella wished her grandmother could see her now. Could see that all those lessons about dignity and grace and kindness hadn't been wasted. That they'd been preparing Isabella for this exact moment. The morning of the engagement party arrived. Isabella woke up early and found her father already awake, sitting in the garden with coffee. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Isabella admitted. "What if I freeze? What if I can't do it?" Richard set down his coffee and looked at his daughter with fierce love. "Listen to me, Isabella. You've already done the hard part. You survived being treated like nothing and you stayed kind. You kept your heart soft in a world that tried to make it hard. Walking into that ballroom tonight? That's the easy part. Because you know who you are now. And nothing they say or do can take that away from you." Isabella took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm ready." "That's my girl," Richard said, standing up and offering his arm. "Let's go show them what they threw away." They arrived at the Grand Hotel in a convoy of 5 black SUVs. Security swept the building first, then Richard and Isabella stepped out of the center vehicle. Isabella took her father's arm, and together they walked through the hotel entrance. She could feel the stares from the hotel staff, the whispers as people recognized Richard Montgomery, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in real estate. But they weren't whispering about him. They were whispering about the beautiful woman on his arm. Who is that with Richard Montgomery? I've never seen her before. She must be someone important. The ballroom doors opened, and Isabella took one last deep breath. Then they walked in together, and the entire room went silent. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Because Isabella didn't look like the broken woman they'd thrown out 2 months ago. She looked like exactly what she was. Royalty. David saw her first. His face went from shock to anger to confusion in seconds. He was standing with Natasha, who was wearing another expensive dress and still wearing Isabella's mother's bracelet. "What are you doing here?" David demanded, walking toward them. "I got a restraining order against you." Isabella's voice was calm, quiet, but it carried. "Check again, David. It was dismissed yesterday morning. Turns out you can't get a restraining order against someone based on lies." Richard stepped forward, and the room collectively gasped. Everyone recognized him. Richard Montgomery was legend in the business world. Old money, real power, the kind of man people studied in business school. "I let her in," Richard said calmly. "This is my hotel. I own this building. And this is my daughter." You could have heard a pin drop. David's face went pale. Patricia, James, and Amanda pushed through the crowd, their faces twisted in confusion and disbelief. "You're what?" Patricia stammered. Richard's voice rang out across the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to formally introduce you to Isabella Montgomery Rodriguez, my daughter, my heir, and the principal beneficiary of the Montgomery Family Trust." He turned to David, and his eyes were ice cold. "David Rodriguez, you threw away a queen and chose a fraud." "What?" David's voice cracked. Richard nodded to his head of security, who stepped forward with a folder. "Natasha Cole isn't who she claims to be. Her real name is Natasha Williams. She's already married and has been for 5 years. Her husband is currently working overseas. She targets ambitious men, manipulates them into relationships, and then disappears with whatever she can take." Natasha tried to run. She actually turned and sprinted for the door in her heels. But security was already there. She slammed into them, stumbled back, and the room erupted in whispers. "This isn't true," Natasha screamed. "David, baby, don't listen to them." But Richard was already having his security play footage on the large screens around the ballroom. Natasha meeting with different men. Natasha laughing with her actual husband about how easy it was to manipulate desperate men. Natasha literally practicing fake tears in a mirror. David looked like he might be sick. "You used me?" Natasha's mask finally dropped. She laughed, wild and bitter. "Of course I used you. You were so easy. So desperate for a woman who made you feel important. I would have taken everything and been gone in 6 months." She lunged at Isabella, but security caught her. They escorted her out while police officers, already called and waiting outside, took her into custody. The room was chaos, but Isabella stood in the center of it, calm and quiet. Grace under pressure. Dignity in crisis. Just like her grandmother had taught her. David fell to his knees right there in front of everyone. "Isabella, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were. I made a mistake. Please, we can fix this." Isabella looked down at him. The man she'd loved. The man she'd sacrificed everything for. The man who'd called her nobody and thrown her away like trash. And she felt nothing but pity. "Now you know," she said softly. "And it changes nothing." Richard had one more revelation. "Oh, and David, that advertising firm you work for? We own the building they lease. As of tomorrow, we're terminating their lease. I suspect they'll have to downsize significantly. Good luck with your career." David's face crumbled. "No, please. That's everything." "Funny," Isabella said. "That's exactly what I was to you. And you threw me away without a second thought." Patricia grabbed Isabella's arm. Isabella, wait. We didn't know. If we had known who your father was. Isabella pulled her arm free gently. That's the problem, Patricia. My value didn't change. I'm the same person I was 2 months ago. The only thing that changed is your knowledge of my bank account. You didn't respect me when you thought I was nobody. So I don't need your respect now. James tried next. Isabella, come on. We're family. No, Isabella said simply. We're not. Family doesn't humiliate each other. Family doesn't stand by while someone they love gets destroyed. You're strangers who happen to share a last name with a man I used to know. Amanda was crying, her phone down for once. I'm sorry. I'll delete the posts. Keep them up, Isabella said. Let them stand as a reminder. People need to see what happens when you treat others like they're beneath you. Richard offered Isabella his arm, and they walked out of that ballroom together. Behind them, David was still on his knees. His family was in chaos. And Isabella didn't look back once. 6 months passed like a gentle rain, washing away the pain and leaving something new in its place. Isabella moved into her father's estate, but kept her grandmother's old apartment in Texas. Every Sunday, she'd drive there, sit in her grandmother's worn chair, and feel the peace of knowing where she came from. She started a foundation called Rosa's Hope, named after her mother, dedicated to helping women escape toxic relationships and rebuild their lives. She funded shelters, legal aid, job training programs, and therapy services. She hired people who'd been where she'd been, who understood what it felt like to be treated like nothing and fight your way back to knowing your worth. The foundation became her purpose. Not the money, not the revenge, not even the relationship with her father, though that was precious. It was helping other women see their own value before they lost everything. Richard and Isabella grew close. They had dinner together every week, and he told her stories about her mother. About how Rosa had been a teacher in a small Texas town when he met her during a business trip. About how she'd been kind and strong, and had seen through his wealth to the lonely man underneath. About the love that created Isabella. Your mother would be so proud of you, Richard said often. Not because you're rich now, because you stayed kind. That's the hardest thing in the world when people are cruel to you. David tried reaching out 137 times. Calls, texts, letters, showing up at places he thought Isabella might be. She never responded. Not once. She learned that not everyone who says sorry deserves your forgiveness. Some people only want forgiveness to make themselves feel better, not because they've actually changed. David's life fell apart exactly as Richard predicted. The advertising firm collapsed without their prime office space. David got laid off. His reputation was destroyed because word spread fast about how he'd treated Richard Montgomery's daughter. Nobody in the industry would touch him. His family suffered too. Patricia's social circle abandoned her. The same women who used to have lunch with her every week suddenly had no time. Her charity positions quietly asked her to step down. James lost major clients, people who did business with Montgomery Properties and weren't about to risk that relationship for a man who'd mocked Isabella on camera. Amanda's social media following turned against her. That video of her mocking Isabella went viral for all the wrong reasons. She became an example of what not to do. Companies dropped her sponsorships. Friends disappeared. They all tried to reach out to Isabella. But she'd learned the most important lesson of her life. Not everyone deserves access to you. And you don't owe your time or energy to people who only valued you once they learned your net worth. David's last attempt was the most desperate. He showed up at one of Isabella's foundation events, somehow got past security, and approached her in front of cameras. Isabella, please just talk to me. I lost everything. I have nothing left. Isabella looked at him calmly. You lost everything? Funny. So did I that night you dragged me out of the ballroom. But I survived. I rebuilt. I moved forward. Now it's your turn to figure out who you are when you have nothing. Just like I did. I'm sorry, David whispered, tears in his eyes. I believe you, Isabella said gently. And I hope you learn from this. I hope you become a better man. But I won't be there to see it. I wish you healing, David. That's all I can give you. Security escorted him out, and that was the last time Isabella saw her ex-husband. But the most beautiful part of Isabella's new life wasn't the money or the justice or even the relationship with her father. It was discovering who she was when she stopped trying to be what other people wanted. She started painting, something she'd loved as a child but given up because David said it was a waste of time. She traveled to her father's properties around the world. She made real friends, people who liked her for her kindness and her laugh, not for her last name. And eventually she met someone new. A man named Julian, a teacher who volunteered at one of her foundation's programs. He'd known her for 3 months before he found out who her father was. And when he did find out, he'd shrugged and said, "That's cool. So, do you want to get coffee tomorrow?" That's how Isabella knew he was different. He saw her, not her bank account. On the anniversary of that terrible night at the gala, Isabella visited her mother's grave in Texas. She placed fresh flowers by the headstone and sat in the grass, the old letter from her father in her lap. "Mom," she said softly, "I wish I could have known you. Dad says I have your smile and your kind heart. He says you would have been proud of me. Not because I have money now, but because I stayed kind when the world was cruel. I hope that's true. I hope you're watching over me." She thought about the girl she used to be, scared and small and desperate for someone to tell her she mattered. And she thought about the woman she'd become, strong and whole and secure in the knowledge that her value came from within. That evening, she found Richard on the terrace of his estate, looking out over the Miami skyline as the sun set. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. Isabella thought about it. Really thought about it. "Only one. I wish I'd opened your letter sooner. But maybe I needed to walk through the fire to understand who I really am." Richard put his arm around her shoulders. "You're my daughter. You're a Montgomery. And you're unstoppable." They stood there together as the sun disappeared and the stars came out. Father and daughter, two people who'd been separated by circumstances but connected by love that transcended time and distance. And Isabella finally understood what her grandmother had been trying to tell her all those years. Your value doesn't come from how people treat you. It comes from who you are when no one's watching. It comes from the choices you make when it would be easier to be cruel. It comes from the strength to stay kind in a world that rewards hardness. Most importantly, it comes from knowing deep in your bones that you are enough exactly as you are. Isabella was enough. She'd always been enough. The only thing that changed was that now she believed it. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. And sometimes the family you're born into isn't the one that raised you.
Thank you.
Sometimes your real family is waiting for you to be ready to find them. Isabella was ready. And she was finally truly home.